Now let's be honest, sometimes the thought of selling a gun crosses your mind. Maybe you need cash, maybe you're making room in the safe, or maybe it's just been collecting dust. But before you list it on your local classifieds or pass it on to the next generation of collectors, there are a few firearms that deserve a second thought. Some guns just hold their value too well, have too much history, or are simply too reliable to let go. Here are 7 guns you should never sell, and by the end of this list, you might be glad you kept that extra one after all. Let's start with number 7, Glock 19, because this pistol really does it all. It's compact enough to conceal carry but big enough to handle like a full-size pistol. It's chambered in 9mm, affordable, reliable, and easy to find. But the real reason you shouldn't sell it? The Glock 19 is basically the Honda Civic of handguns. It's dependable, customizable, and fits just about every role, from home defense to range duty. Even if you've moved on to other pistols or more expensive options, the Glock 19 is one of those guns that's always nice to have around. It's easy to shoot, simple to maintain, and if things ever really go south, it's exactly the kind of sidearm you'd want in your holster. So even if it's not your main squeeze anymore, hang on to it, you'll thank yourself later. Now moving on from pistols to shotguns at number 6, you probably saw this one coming, right? The Remington 870 is one of the most iconic pump-action shotguns in American history, with over 11 million sold. There's a good reason why. It's a workhorse. Reliable, tough, and ready for pretty much anything. Home defense, deer hunting, clay shooting, you name it, the 870 can handle it. The reason you shouldn't sell yours? Well, first of all, they don't quite make them like they used to, especially the older models made before Remington's production issues. And even though you might have upgraded to something more modern or tactical, that old 870 is still going to do the job every time you rack the slide. It's the kind of gun that gets passed down, not passed along to a stranger on Craigslist. And speaking of classics, number 5 is a rifle that almost every gun owner has had at some point, the Ruger 1022. This little rifle is probably the first one a lot of us ever shot, and for good reason. The Ruger 1022 is basically the king of rimfire rifles. It's affordable, incredibly reliable, and ridiculously customizable. From the moment it came out in 1964, it's been a favorite for teaching beginners, small game hunting, and just plain old backyard plinking. So, why keep it? Because there's always a reason to own a good .22 LR rifle, and the 1022 is one of the best. Whether you're trying to conserve ammo, introduce someone to shooting, or take down some pests, the 1022 gets the job done. Plus, they hold their value really well, especially older models or any limited edition variants. And let's be honest, you'll always have fun shooting it. Now, if we're going to talk about revolvers, we've got to talk about the Colt Python. Make it a fancy number 4, because the Colt Python isn't just a revolver, it's a piece of art. Made famous in everything from movies to TV shows, it earned a reputation for having one of the smoothest double-action triggers ever and a level of craftsmanship you just don't see anymore. Chambered in .357 Magnum, it's a powerful and classy piece of hardware. These were out of production for years, and prices on vintage models skyrocketed. Colt did bring them back in recent years, but original Pythons from the 60s, 70s, or 80s are still incredibly valuable. So unless you're in dire need of cash, this is one of those guns that collectors dream about. Selling it would be like selling a classic muscle car. You might regret it the moment the papers are signed. And speaking of legendary firearms with history, at number 3, you absolutely can't overlook the M1 Garand. There's just something special about owning a piece of history, and that's exactly what you get with an M1 Garand. Used by U.S. forces during World War II and the Korean War, the Garand is a semi-automatic rifle chambered in .30-06 that was way ahead of its time. General Patton famously called it the greatest battle implement ever devised, and it earned that title. If you've got one of these in your collection, especially a military-issued model, you've got a serious piece of Americana. Selling it might net you a decent chunk of change, but you'd be giving up something that's both historically important and actually fun to shoot. Plus, the unique ping sound when the clip ejects, that never gets old. Sliding into number 2 spot on this list is none other than the 1911 pistol, or as I like to call it, the timeless legend. Because when it comes to iconic handguns, it doesn't get much more classic than the 1911. This legendary sidearm has been around for well over a century, and it's still going strong. Designed by the one and only John Browning and officially adopted by the U.S. military in, yep, you guessed it, 1911, this pistol saw action in both world wars and countless conflicts after that. What really sets the 1911 apart is its sturdy design, smooth trigger, and that unmistakable 45 ACP punch. It's the kind of gun that feels solid and balanced the moment you pick it up. And while some folks like to say it's a bit outdated in the modern era, others would argue it's battle-proven and still capable of incredible accuracy and reliability. Honestly, both camps have a point, but one thing's for sure, it still earns its place in the safe. So, why hold on to it? Well, aside from the obvious historical significance, there's just something special about the way a 1911 fits in your hand. Whether you've got an old GI model that's seen some stories or a slick modern custom build, it's a firearm that blends form, function, and heritage. And let's be real, no serious collection feels quite complete without at least one 1911 sitting proudly in it. And last but absolutely not least, we've got the S&W Model 686. If you're going to own just one revolver, make it this one. This stainless steel .357 Magnum is built like a tank, shoots like a dream, and looks pretty great too. It balances perfectly between being heavy enough to tame recoil and light enough to carry on the hip. What makes it a never-sell gun? First off, versatility. You can shoot .38 Special for low recoil plinking, or load it up with Full House .357 for serious defense or hunting. The 686 is also known for having some of the best out-of-the-box triggers you'll find on a revolver. It's just as at home on the range as it is on your nightstand. And because S&W revolvers hold their value incredibly well, there's no reason to part ways with one unless you're upgrading, which, honestly, would be tough to do. Now, before we wrap up, let's give a nod to a firearm that might not have made the main list, but certainly deserves a spot on this list because it is favored by 50 countries, and I'm sure many of you watching might own it, and it's none other than the Browning High Power. Designed by the legendary John Browning and completed by Dieudonné Save at FN Herstal, the High Power was introduced in 1935. It became one of the most widely used military pistols in history, adopted by over 50 countries and serving in numerous conflicts worldwide. The High Power was notable for its high-capacity 13-round magazine, a significant advancement at the time. Its design influenced many modern pistols, and its reliability and performance earned it a stellar reputation among military and law enforcement agencies. Now, here's the kicker. Browning officially stopped producing the High Power in 2018. That means originals, especially the classic Belgian-made models, are no longer in production, and they're only going to get harder to find as time goes on. In other words, if you've got one, hold on to it. Selling it now might get you a few bucks, but you'll be parting ways with a firearm that's becoming increasingly collectible and appreciated by shooters and historians alike. And let's not forget the emotional side of owning something like a High Power. For many people, this was their first serious 9mm, something with history, heft, and a soul. You don't get that kind of connection with every gun. Some firearms feel like tools. The High Power? It feels like legacy in your hands. So even though this is technically a bonus entry, don't treat it like an afterthought. Whether it's a wartime relic passed down from a relative or a gently used classic you picked up at a gun show, the Browning High Power is one of those underrated gems that deserves a permanent home in your collection. Now, look, no one's saying you should never sell a firearm. There are times when it makes sense, trading up, thinning out the collection, or helping cover bills. But these 7 guns, they're kind of the don't touch section of the safe. They're reliable, valuable, historically significant, or just too fun to part with. So next time you're tempted to cash one in, think twice, because a Glock 19, a Remington 870, or a vintage Colt Python might not be easy to replace down the line. And even if you do find another one, it won't be your one, the one with the stories, the memories, and the rounds you put through it. And that's a wrap for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.